Greetings, this is Reverend Bue McCormick of True Vow Temple. In this presentation, the 7th of 10 parts, I will be talking about the Hoben Pon, or Skillful Means chapter, whose initial prose passage is recited in the morning and evening devotional practice and other services of Nichiren Buddhism. In this video, we will cover the following portion of the Hoben Pon. Shari hotsu nyo rai no shuju fun betsu gyo se shoho gonji nu nane ka shujin shari hatsu shuyo gonji mudo muhen mizo uho bushitsu joju. Which means, Shariputra, the Tathagata can make various distinctions and skillfully expound all dharmas. They speak gently so that the hearts of the people will be pleased. Shariputra, in short, the Buddhas have fully attained the immeasurable, infinite, and unprecedented Dharma. In this video, I will be covering 2 sections, since they are short. Generally, I have been treating a section as each part of the Buddha's address that begins with either the Buddha calling out to Shariputra, or asking the question, "Why is this?" In the first case, it seems the Buddha is not just calling out the name of his chief disciple, but also saying, "Pay attention to this statement." In the second case, the question, "Why is this?" is a rhetorical question. He isn't really expecting an answer from the assembly. It is a way of announcing that he is about to explain further what he just said. Many translations will simply translate "why is this" as "because." Here, the Buddha is explaining in the first section that in order to skillfully expound all dharmas, he makes various distinctions. We will discuss these in a moment. The Buddha is also saying that he speaks gently so that people will be pleased to hear what he has to say. I will also discuss that further. In the second section, the Buddha is asserting that all Buddhas have fully attained the immeasurable, infinite, and unprecedented Dharma. I have already explained the term that is translated here as unprecedented Dharma, and since it is immeasurable and infinite, I am not going to presume to say anything more about this Dharma that all Buddhas have fully attained, except to express the hope that we also attain it in good time through our own faith, practice, and study. Now let's look at some key terms used in this passage. Funbetsu means to divide, distinguish, analyze, or make discrimination. These characters can also be used to translate the Sanskrit term vikalpa or samkalpa, which means false discrimination, such as the false discrimination of a self, or the false discrimination that leads to the duality of self and other. However, funbetsu can also be taken to mean analysis or wise discernment, which is how it is being used in this context. In particular, throughout the second chapter of the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha states that he divided the Dharma into 3 vehicles, because sentient beings would be too overwhelmed if they heard the teaching of the one Buddha vehicle without any preparation. In Chapter 1, Manjushri Bodhisattva told the story of a past Buddha named Sun Moon Light, who also divided the Dharma. He said of that past Buddha's teaching, "For those seeking to become voice hearers, he accordingly taught the Dharma of the Four Noble Truths, enabling them to transcend birth, aging, illness, and death, and ultimately attain nirvana. For those seeking to become privately awakened ones, he accordingly taught the Dharma of the 12-fold chain of dependent origination. And, as appropriate for bodhisattvas, he taught the Dharma of the 6 perfections, enabling them to attain supreme perfect awakening and achieve all-embracing wisdom." Now all of these teachings are actually only for bodhisattvas. As Shakyamuni Buddha says in Chapter 2 about how all Buddhas divide the Dharma like this as a skillful means, although we expound the 3 vehicles, our purpose is to teach only bodhisattvas. It would be a mistake to think that the teachings of the Four Noble Truths, dependent origination, or the 6 perfections are just partial teachings to be discarded once the one vehicle is finally taught. They are all teachings of the one vehicle, even if they seem associated with the 3 vehicles. Tiantai Jeri showed that in the case of the Four Noble Truths and the 12-fold chain of dependent origination, these teachings can be understood in deeper and deeper ways, until they are as much expressions of the perfect teaching of the Lotus Sutra as they are of the skillful means first given to the historical voice-hearer disciples. Let's use the Four Noble Truths as an example. The Four Noble Truths, as initially taught in the Deer Park to the 5 Ascetics by Shakyamuni Buddha, are the Four Noble Truths as arising and ceasing. This is because, in the Tripitaka teaching, the voice-hearers are said to accept suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading to its cessation, as referring to actual things that come and go. There is suffering within the 6 realms of rebirth, and by following the Eightfold Path, we can bring an end to it and become arhats. But then there is the teaching such as found in the Heart Sutra, that there is no suffering, no origin, no cessation, and no way leading to cessation. This is the Four Noble Truths as non-arising and non-ceasing. The Buddha shared this with those following the 2 vehicles of the voice-hearers and privately awakened ones, and those following the Bodhisattva vehicle. With the help of this teaching, the Buddha's followers attained the insight that the Four Noble Truths are not talking about actual things that substantially arise and cease. And when one lets go of the delusion that there are selves that suffer, or that the phenomena that comprises suffering have a self-nature, then they will be able to attain liberation from the 6 realms, which are now seen as empty, or go on to aspire to Buddhahood. The Buddha also taught the Four Noble Truths as immeasurable, which is a teaching that is distinctly for bodhisattvas. An example of this can be found in Chapter 8 of the Flower Garland Sutra, wherein Manjushri Bodhisattva lists all the alternative ways of talking about the Four Noble Truths. For instance, instead of suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the way to its cessation, one could talk in terms of oppression, bondage, freedom, and progress towards freedom. Manjushri states, "In this world there are 4 quadrillion such names to express the 4 holy truths in accord with the mentalities of sentient beings, to cause them all to be harmonized and pacified." Finally, there are the Four Noble Truths as uncontrived, which is the Four Noble Truths of the perfect teaching as expressed in the Lotus Sutra. In this perspective, each of the Four Noble Truths is an expression of the middle way. Suffering and nirvana are both suchness. The defilements that are the origin of suffering and awakening are both suchness. The cessation of suffering is to realize that samsara is itself nirvana, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering is to realize that the defilements are themselves awakening. The 12-fold chain of dependent origination can also be understood as literally stated, as empty, as just one of an infinite variety of ways of conveying how things are, or as an expression of the middle way, wherein what has been taken to be suffering in its various causes and conditions is actually the unconditioned. The 6 perfections can also be taken at face value, or as empty, or as just one of a variety of ways of expressing the way to Buddhahood, or as an expression of the middle way. The point is that each of the teachings particular to one of the 3 vehicles is really a teaching of the one vehicle. Therefore, each of them can be understood in a shallow and biased way, or in a deeply profound way that points directly to the true reality of all things as taught in the perfect teaching of the Lotus Sutra. Nyunan can mean malleable, pliant, gentle, soft, mild, or flexible. Here, it obviously means to speak gently, but this term can also refer to a flexibility of mind that can overcome defilements such as pride and wrong or biased views. In connection with that, I'd like to point out that Tiantai Juri called what was expounded in the Lotus Sutra the perfect teaching. The character for perfect can also mean a circle, a sphere. It can also mean comprehensive, and even a voice that is melodious and agreeable. Basically, it is a teaching that is not one-sided, agreeable, comprehensive, and therefore perfect or perfected. I now bring this 7th of a 10-part presentation on the Skillful Means chapter of the Lotus Sutra to a close. I look forward to your questions and comments. May the merits of this talk on the Dharma extend universally to all, so that we and all living beings together accomplish the Buddha way.